excited about a few things that are in it.
Guess what? None of that got caught because I forgot to turn the microphone on.
We should try again.
It's on now. So let's try this again. I'm Kyle. Today we're going to talk about Ben Richten's Guide to Ravenloft. It came out this last week. It's the new 5th edition Wizards of the Coast book. It's got lots of nifty stuff in it today. Ben and Robert are with me. You doing good?
I am.
Robert?
I'm doing okay myself.
All right. Sounds good. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. What do you want to start with? You want to start with character stuff?
Sure. I mean, it's at the front of the book, so
Okay.
it's a good place to start.
Yeah. So with the character creation, or do you want to just start with the?
I mean, honestly, the character creation stuff, the most important stuff of that line is the lineages. That's the meat of the chapter. Most of it's just describing kind of, how to build a character of it for a horror themed game.
Right.
But the exciting parts are the three different races of sorts that they've given us to play with. Of course, you get the Dhampir. So for those of you who want to play a vampire, guess what? There's stats for that now. Vampire adjacent. They are not bad. It honestly, as a whole, not much has changed from the Unearthed Arcana, I don't think.
Right. I like the first line for Dhampir. It's when creating a Dhampir, ask your DM if it makes sense for your character to have ties to one of the following domains of dread. And all I can think of is a character that we both play with, Robert, on Sundays, and that's all I can think of. But no, they're really cool in general.
There was honestly the only they're okay. They got dark vision. They don't need to breathe. You get a free spider climb out of the deal. You get a vampire bite that does some piercing damage, and you can use it to gain a bonus or get some hit points back. Overall, not a little bad package. Honestly, it reminds me of back when in 4th ed, when vampire was a class instead of a race. Okay. My wife and I they had these the organized play league back then was more centered. They had like a more casual version, but then they also had a souped up version where you were bring your most hardcore characters and try to beat this one adventure, and if you can't, try next week because this is it. It's going to be impossible. You got to figure it out. And that was about the time that Vampire came out as a class option, but Fairy existed as a race option. So my wife and I both made a pair of Vampire Fairies that were kind of adorable in their own way. But with this, since it's got the Ancestral Legacy feature of the race, you could be yeah, Fairy's a race now. Pixie's a race now, or whatever, thanks to the new UA that dropped a while back with all the Feywild stuff. And then you're yeah, I guess I can make a Vampire Fairy again. Sure,
yeah,
be great.
Go
around feeding off squirrels.
Super cool.
Who's gonna stop me?
Right, exactly.
But no, overall, it's not bad. It's a solid little. If you want to be a vampire or a little edgy vampire person. Nothing wrong all around.
I guess I didn't realize that they had the option to be a small or medium-sized creature.
Most of them do because of how the legacy option works. Because these are all kind of half. These are a curse overlay to a race more than anything else. Because with the legacy options you can be I am a Dhampir who is also a halfling. Well, that means I have to be small sized.
Right.
That way you don't run into the problem where. You're I want to be a Dhampir, but also a halfling. Does that mean I all of a sudden become a medium-sized creature? Because Dhampir, in order to solve that problem, they were for these, just pick one.
Right.
It's almost like a template from 3.5 or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. speed of 35, also a climb of 35 feet.
Well, since they've got the spider climb, also climbing is not a problem for them.
So the ancestral legacy, it says here, if you replace a race with this lineage, you can keep the following elements of that race. Any skill proficiencies you gain from it, and any climbing, flying, or swimming speed you gain from it. If you don't keep any of those elements, or you choose this lineage at character creation, you gain proficiency in 2 skills of your choice. So that's pretty cool. Yeah, that's solid. Get the vampiric bite. Robert, you played one of these briefly, right?
Yeah, you were running a Curse of Strahd game where you kind of built my character and ran this.
Yeah. He showed up one day and I was like, here, play this Warlock Blood Hunter Dampier.
It was interesting.
Yeah. It was something else. And the vampiric bite, it works the same way as like the vampire spawn bite does, right? Because you regain hit points equal to the piercing damage. Oh, okay, that's the different part, I guess. Because it's not necrotic damage, right?
Yeah, it's just piercing damage.
Yeah.
You get you can choose to either get the damage back as hit points or get a bonus to your next ability check equal to the damage dealt by the bite. So it's basically like throwing it, since it's only a D4 damage. It's basically like effectively your choice of get some health back or get a free bless on your next thing.
Okay.
Because bless is a D4 as well, right? If I remember correctly. Yeah. So you can either go one or the other, which makes it, I guess, more useful to some classes that want that extra little edge for that, little plus extra. And then I foresee that much of the time people are probably just going to be sucking hit points out of their enemies.
Yeah.
I don't. There will be some corner cases where that bonus to the roll comes up, but I have a feeling that for the most part, just getting the hit points back is going to be the important part of that equation.
Especially early on, if it's starting off early with it.
Yeah. Right. So then there's the Hexbloods.
Yes.
Interesting things to see. Too.
Right. They are effectively half hags, sort of. So whereas the Dampier were your vampire-esque players, these are your hag or witch coven kind of fey-blooded type. They've got a bunch of different little features that are kind of, the one that interests me the most is that you stop becoming humanoid and become fey.
Okay.
As a creature type, which means certain spells that only target humanoids may no longer target you.
Is that the? Okay. I got you.
You stop. I think if I remember correctly, you basically like stop being a person when it comes to hold person because it only targets humanoids.
Oh gosh. Okay.
Which is kind of fun in its own way, but the Eerie token is my favorite add-on feature because you can just like rip off one of your, like a lock of hair or a nail or like one of your teeth, and it becomes like a magical token that can do things. So you can either like send telepathic messages, you can use it as like a scrying tool, like you can like tear off a lock of your hair and like leave it behind in a room and be able to scry on that room because a piece of you is there. Or you can use it to cast either Disguise Self or Hex on people. So lots of little interesting features that you can use with that, and it lends to a lot of interesting character options where you can just kind of sit there and be like, all right, well, as a rogue, do I want to leave behind a piece of me in this area, or I need to have like just spy on like this room after I leave, case the joint kind of,
right.
Or do I want to like give it to an ally and send them away so that we can telepathically talk to each other, or being able to cast Disguise Self or Hex are both really handy in two different situations altogether. But that's it's just an interesting little quirk of the group, the Hexbloods, that I don't know what kind of character I'm gonna make that's Hexblooded yet, but it's gonna happen. Like right. I don't know what yet, but it's gonna be fun. Did anything Hexblood wise?
This was the first time I haven't had a chance to actually look over the book. But that little magical token thing really sounds like it can be useful if used right.
Yeah. Just all around, like, it's kind of like with the draconic options we talked about last week. It's so far, the stuff that I've read here, it's just solid. I haven't found anything I don't like.
Mm-hmm.
There's always room for improvement, but I feel like especially with the Hexblood, like, there's so much here. Just as like as one race, there's just quite a bit there to choose from that you can get from this. The telepathic message is pretty cool too. As an action, you can send a telepathic message to a creature holding or carrying the token. As long as you are within 10 miles of it, the message can contain up to 25 words. So that's pretty cool.
It's like a free telepathic sending spell. Yeah. Honestly.
And it just costs an action. So, I mean, now if you were DMing that, and it costs an action, if you're not in an action-based scenario,
then you just do it. Like
cinematically,
right? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, things that effectively cost an action outside of combat you don't care.
Right.
Whether it's an action, a bonus action, that outside of combat is the only time really, whether that be physical combat or some kind of like social combat or something, that the action economy matters at all.
Gotcha. No, I like it a lot. So let's skim through here. I know we're trying to.
And then there's the Reborn.
Yeah.
For those of you who want to play the Crow, or other.
I mean,
it can't rain all the time.
Or other back from the dead for various reasons characters.
As I sit here. No, they're so cool. They've got again, smaller, medium size, deathless nature. You've escaped death, a fact represented by the following benefits. You have advantage on saving throws against disease and being poisoned, and you have resistance to poison damage. You have advantage on death saving throws. You don't need to eat, drink, or breathe. You don't need to sleep, and magic can't put you to sleep. You can finish a long rest in 4 hours if you spend those hours in an inactive, motionless state, during which you retain consciousnness. What's not to like about this?
Right. It's like the best parts of being undead and kind of like being an elf.
This is really hard for me to say, but it's almost better than being an elf.
Well, I mean, it is, because you get the resistance to poison damage and advantage on saving throws on top of that. And you don't need to eat, drink, or breathe.
As someone who likes to play elves frequently, it's better than playing an elf.
Then there's the knowledge of past life power. That one's really good, too, where you just kind of like get a glimpse of your past. and then you can like make an ability check and just add an extra d6 to the roll, just because you get a glimpse of how you did it last time, or something, and it just kind of clicks.
Yeah. And that's you can roll a d6 immediately after seeing the number on the d20 and add the number of the d6 to the check. That's
Yeah, you don't. Yeah, it's after the roll. Yeah. After the roll, you can decide if you want to add that extra d6.
Which is good because it's
super
not
handy.
Because in most cases you have to decide whether you're going to do that before. So it's nice to be able to roll it and be like, oh, well, that's a 12. I can use d6.
I mean, it's just another one of those after you see, but before the results are said.
Yeah.
It's always nice.
Languages are the same, I guess. It's just standard issue language stuff. The deathless nature is the biggest thing. That's just the cool thing about those. In addition to, it's just a standard 30 feet. For any of those of you interested, if you have a Van Richten's or are planning on getting one, if you want that specific information, that's on page 20. That's it for the new races, right?
That is it for the new races, yes. They had a little bit of information up front about like kind of just like I said, creating characters in, but that's all just kind of boilerplate. This is how you do things in a horror game. Maybe you should consider these options to make your character more spooky. Stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, but no. But from there you move on to the more fun things, the dark bargains. Because this is, of course, Ravenloft. All the domains of dread are ruled by this dark conclave of whatever in the mists. And
which part is that in?
It's still chapter 1.
Is this chapter 1?
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. Okay. Yeah, it's just down farther, isn't it?
Yeah. But no, the dark bargains are whenever you wanted. Well, in the case of Ravenloft, whenever you strike a bargain with like one of the lords of the various realms of Ravenloft, or should your character die and the powers of the dark powers that be decide to strike a deal with you, or any number of other fun reasons. They list a few of them here. It's a Dark Lord will negotiate with you, but first you must accept their dark gift, or time stops right on the verge of death and a mysterious voice offers to call you out and give you some help or something by offering you a gift.
I see this picture here on the page, and then I see in the mirror there's like this wispy.
He looks familiar, doesn't he?
He does. Very, very familiar. I saw that when they were doing the promo for on D&D Beyond for doing the Van Richten's, and that was the picture that they showed, and then they did this little fancy CGI work where there's nothing in the mirror, and then that appears, and I was like, ooh.
Right.
It was cool.
No. For those of you who have Demon Pact Warlocks on hand, you ever want to start handing out some dark bargains on occasion, this is the book where you get the fun toys.
Yeah.
But yeah, so there's just a lot of interesting ways to do it, but Echoing Soul is the first one. It gives you proficiency in 2 skills of your choice. You can speak, read, and write an additional language, and then it's all of these things have like some good sides, and then immediately the downside, or downside depending on how you look at it.
Right.
But the intrusive echoes, immediately after you make an attack roll, if you roll a 1, all of a sudden the soul's memories that because you're sharing a soul, or a soul is sharing your body with your other soul in this particular instance, and they begin doing things to you. So you roll a d6. On a 1 you're like charmed for a bit, on a 2 you're frightened, on a 3 you're blinded, On a 4, you may be in some kind of a state where you perceive a whole different reality than one presented to you. On a 5, you're like incapacitated by overwhelming emotions, and then on 6, you basically get a free reroll because it was a good memory. So it's not always bad when you fail,
right?
But it's I do want to be in a game at some point where somebody has this one, and they've had just a rough time of it, but they hit that 1 and they're like, oh no, and then they roll and it's like, oh man, it's a 6, so they get to reroll and then they crit or something. I want to see that progression happen in game at some point.
All the emotions,
right? You just did that whole roller coaster,
right? No, it's that's one of the cooler ones, I think. I do like I was reading just the generic dark bargains. Like the DM might have a mysterious force intervene and offer a dark gift when the desperate or thematic instance presents itself, such as in any of the following cases. A Dark Lord will negotiate with a party only if a character seals the deal by accepting their dark gift, like right there off the bat. Just good stuff right there.
It's like, you want to deal with me? Great. Let's make a deal.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that one's fine. The next one, Whispering Spirits, that one, it's okay. It is not immediately jumped out at me. I mean, you learn the message cantrip and you can cast it and do stuff with it.
Is it the gather whispers?
Maybe.
Yeah.
Gathered Whispers. Yeah. So then there's like the sudden cacophony part where like you're hit with an attack. You can use your reaction to like channel your spirits at them to basically get your proficiency bonus to the AC, which it's like kind of like a cheap shield.
Yeah,
it's the poor man's shield spell, because you're probably never gonna have a proficiency bonus high enough to not be just a shield spell.
Yeah.
But then its thing is if you roll a 1, you have to roll a d4. And it's same deal. On a 1, you get disadvantage. 2, you're deafened. 3, you're frightened. And then 4, for the next 10 minutes, you can ask your spirits and basically cast an augury spell. So, there's always at least one not terrible option on these dark bargains,
which is nice because, again, it's a dark bargain. So it's nice that they give you like a glimpse of hope. I guess there's a light at the end of the tunnel somewhere, right?
My favorite one so far is the Living Shadow one, because I love the quirk that comes with them, because you get like a D6 choice of like quirks if you don't want to pick them.
Yeah.
There you go. So, you can have, your shadow could often hold weapons or bear wounds that don't exist. I always wondered about that bear wounds one, like, because it's a shadow, so it's like matte black, so you can't tell that like it's bleeding. But maybe it's like it's just missing an arm or something. Sometimes your shadow could panic and try to get other people's attention, or it could just make threatening gestures and try to creep people out, or it doesn't mirror your movements as correctly as it should, or constantly breaks tiny objects in your presence, stuff like that. But I like it because you get Mage Hand, everyone's favorite utility cantrip. It just flat out like, here's some Mage Hand, it's fine. Your shadow, and I like the aesthetics of like having your shadow go like pick something up for you.
Yeah.
Like just have the shadow like stretch away from your body, and then like reach out and grab something. And then there's the Shadow Strike. So basically, it can move it increases your reach because your shadow's doing the attack. So while you're fighting, your shadow could stretch out an extra like 10 feet and attack somebody who's effectively like 15 feet away from you. It's a fun feature that could be useful in all kinds of situations.
Yeah.
And then of course the ominous will downside where you roll the 1, you get to play on the table. And it's, you learn a secret about the nature of the mists. But is it the Misty Travel one? That's the mist one. I scrolled too far down.
I feel like for you, these are all good things because I like to think I know you well enough to know that you enjoy tables. And it's exciting stuff for you.
I love tables. Tables are fun.
Yeah.
They have all kinds of opportunity.
Yeah. No, that's a pretty cool one. Is this it's a bargain?
Yes.
One of the dark bargains. Is this something that you can just add into your character's story? Or is it supposed to be like a class feature?
No. It's not a class feature, race feature, or anything like that. It's an extra add-on.
Okay.
So arguably, if I were a DM starting a game,
right,
a horror themed game, or a game where I wanted to use the dark bargains in some way, shape, or form, I definitely would not allow a bunch of my players to automatically have one out the gate.
Yeah.
I would at most maybe let one character have one. Maybe. Especially if they had a really good a really good backstory reason. But honestly,
right,
these are you could consider them kind of like a treasure.
Okay.
Anytime you would give the players a treasure or some loot somewhere, if it's thematically appropriate, maybe a dark bargain is also treasure, in its own weird way, or if it's thematically appropriate in, one of the ways you can get the dark bargains is by one of the last ones on the list of how you get a dark bargain is. You touch a mysterious amber sarcophagus, and the fourth within it, forces, So you could picture a scenario, right, where your party is exploring an ancient pyramid thing, and they get to the very bottom, and they fight the mummy, or they haven't had a chance to fight the mummy yet, and they go, the rogue goes up to mess with the sarcophagus, or the fighter's I'll just flip this over and we'll loot what's inside, or the wizard's looking at some rune covered, hieroglyph covered wall, and he goes out to touch it. She points at it and starts poking at it,
right,
and the energies within kind of connect with her or him and try to get. That's how a dark bargain could form as a treasure,
right,
or something.
It's pretty much you go to your DM and say, hey,
right, yeah. or your DM has a list of these and is I'm going to offer this to you. You can choose to accept this or not. I don't care what. Well, they may care one way or the other, but it's not like they won't have other opportunities to offer other bargains, maybe to other players in the future if you don't accept.
Right.
So no, there's a lot of equity in these. You can use them to kind of prod the story along in some respects. You can dangle them as a reward for those who are less discerning about where the rewards come from.
Yeah, it's solid. As someone who likes to play warlocks,
Mm-hmm.
Like these were built for me.
Right. And, like the Mistwalker one, Misty Step, Mist Travel, all that fun stuff. The Skin Shifter one, I'm not really sure about.
Yeah.
I haven't had a chance to go over it as much. The Symbiotic Bean one seems interesting. I can see some of the worlds where that one kind of came from. But that one seems like more work than it's worth because the DM has to like make your symbiotes like stats along, and then there's a whole bunch of extra work in that one that I'm not as interested in personally.
Right.
For the more combat centric, there's just the Touch of Death one. You get the ability to do like a D10 necrotic damage. Or turn off their resistances to damage. But if you, when you start your turn grappling a creature, it can just take damage. Just touching you is unhealthy.
So many choices.
So yeah, there's
so many.
And all of them are pretty handy. Like they all have their uses. They all have their perks and downsides. But I prefer the ones that have like a roll on a table, and because not all of them are table based. But the ones that are like, hey, you hecked up. Let's see how interestingly you hecked up.
Right. So those races. Dark bargains, stuff like that. What do you guys want to do? Talk through the subclasses and then the monsters?
Sure.
Yeah. All right. So new subclass options.
Yeah. So these were they were in part of like one of the older UAs. One of the test run Unearthed Arcanas a while back, and honestly, they haven't changed that much.
That's fair.
A little bit. I mean, they're fine. Of the two, I am more a fan of the Bard.
The College
of Spirits Bard.
Yeah.
I like the idea of having kind of like a trinket or like a little, like a skull. Like you can get like a really weird Edgar Allan Poe style bard out of these things. Where you have you just sit there by your writing desk, sitting there scribbling away. Next to you is the skull, and out and it whispers dark longings to you as you write your dearest memoirs.
Right. So at third level, the bard chooses the college. At first level, a warlock chooses an otherworldly patron. This section offers the College of Spirits. Oh, okay.
Right.
Yeah.
So automatically you get guidance because the spirits are giving you guidance, so you get that cantrip. Also, you get your spell focus, which some weird trinket, usually like a crystal ball, skull, spirit board, deck of cards. At 6th level, when you cast a spell that does damage or restores hit points through the focus, you get to roll a d6, and you gain bonuses to 1 damage or 1 healing spell equal to the roll. I like the Tales of Beyond feature because you can use your action and roll on this tale table, and depending on what you roll, kind of grant an interesting feature. And there's like, what, it's a d12? Yeah, it's a 12. Depending on the tale you tell, there's about 12 different effects that you can do. So, for the next 10 minutes, whenever a target makes an intelligence, wisdom, charisma check, they can add an extra die's number so that's kind of fun.
Yeah.
Or number 2 is the melee attack equivalent. I'm trying to remember my favorite one from the line. I think it was maybe Tales of the Phantom, because it makes you invisible, and then when you hit a creature, it takes necrotic damage equal to your roll on the Bardic Inspiration dice, and becomes frightened of you because you like spook it, because you're a ghosty goo now, and you just kind of like, I'm invisible, ha! And they're like, oh no, where'd you come from, ghost?
Just the Undead Patrons in general.
So the Undead Patron, I preferred the Deathless one that was in one of the other books a while back. I preferred that. I don't remember what book that one's in either. But that one, I preferred that one to the Undead.
Really?
Because it was more general. I am personally less of a fan of super specific patrons. With the with the Fae Pact, you have access to all the Fae ever as your possible patrony choices. With the Great Old One Pact, any weird Cthulian monstrosity. With the Demon Pact, any demon or devil that you could consider, these are all available to you. With the Deathless Pact, any ageless being for any reason, could be, they could have been undead. They could have been some form of Fae that just didn't quite follow the Fae Pact. Like you were trying to build a pact with some kind of ageless, immortal being that didn't quite follow the Fae Pact rules or the demon rules or something like that. Like when we did Dungeon of the Mad Mage, when I had a Divine Pact Warlock, because they were interested in soon as that had that story going. And when we changed her over, she made a pact with one of the warlords of the Nine Hells.
Gotcha.
Who I made one of the deathless. She was like a high tier necromancer.
Yeah.
She wasn't undead.
Yeah. But
she effectively was immortal.
Gotcha.
Because she was a powerful necromancer and she rolled around in the Nine Hells. So I didn't count her as like a mortal being.
Yeah.
For that regard. So for the pact, I was like, Deathless Pact works just fine for her as a catch-all in that regard. The Warlock, the Undead Pact is super similar, honestly.
They're pretty specific though about the undead types.
Right. But I mean, like the abilities they have are super similar to the Deathless Pact Warlock stuff. Okay. And I just think that honestly they could have just kept it general instead of like super specifying, you need the undead version of the already Deathless Pact. We have to call out specifically the undead for some reason. And I understand it's horror themed and sure. But I don't know, like they're okay. They're just not. They're not my preferred warlock patron. They're fine.
Being a horror themed game, they are nothing to scream about. All right, I had to do that one time. No. That's as far as the character options and things like that go. I like most of that. Like you say, I'm a little underwhelmed with the undead choices. As far as those things go.
It's fine. It's just not great.
Yeah, they're okay.
The best part though of the entire character creation line, they gave us a new trinket table.
Where's that at?
At the very bottom of chapter 1.
Horror trinkets.
Yeah. They gave us 100 new trinkets.
How come I can't see the table?
I don't know the answer to that question.
That's fair. I will find it.
I can see that table, and it's great. Yeah, I personally love handing out trinkets during character creation.
There it is.
And anytime I can get more trinket tables to pull from, because, after a while you start repeating on trinkets. And anytime you can get more trinkets to hand out. Because the characters always, giving players fun, weird things that don't, mechanically matter in any way, shape, or form, but makes their characters have, 36 is a porcelain doll's head that always seems to be looking at you.
No.
Why does your character have that?
No. This is not Resident Evil 8.
It can be.
No. There's...
Or 29. Nails from the coffin of a murderer. I want to know why your character is carrying those around. There's a story in there, and I want to know what it is.
You see, I wanted him to come back.
Number 3 is clothes stolen from a scarecrow.
Yeah.
It's kind of...
Now there's a pretty reasonable story in those. You were robbed on the road, and you just needed some new clothes, and there was a scarecrow there, so you stole those.
A spinning top carved with 4 faces: happy, sad, dreadful, not dreadful, wrathful, and dead.
Mm-hmm.
That's creepy. One of those things you find in a...
Oh yeah, by the way, trinkets are not just limited to character creation, people. You can just put them in treasure piles. And just watch your players go, wait, what?
Yeah, I was going to say, we talked through a little bit of this last week with the random art and
art
stuff.
Objects,
yeah.
Or then you got the really weird ones on this list, 51, a stone that emits a single endless sigh. Why does it do this thing? Who knows?
Oh, jeez.
It just wants somebody to talk to.
Yeah.
And then some of them are slightly useful. There was one that was just perfume that a vial of perfume, the scent of which only certain creatures can detect. That has a chance to be useful in game.
Yeah.
Depending on what your plans are. But yeah, no, I love trinket tables. I'm overjoyed anytime a setting book is and here's some more weird trinkets.
I like 68. 68's a pearl necklace that turns red under the full moon. I like it.
Could be neat.
Yeah.
There might be a story there.
There could be. Going to send her a one shot around that hole. Just that.
You very easily can. No trinkets. When I had a group of friends who either hadn't played D&D in a super long time, or none of them had ever really played 5th edition D&D at all, and most of them had just not really played a lot of D&D at all in their life.
Right.
And so I did a basic dungeon. Opened up in their town. It was kind of, but I needed treasure for it, but I didn't want to do. So it was almost the entire dungeon was just filled with trinkets. All of the treasure piles were about 90% stuff from various trinket tables, and they loved it because they didn't know, and their party, and one of them was I found this orb etched in ancient runes of alchemical nature. I bet it's cool and important. And I'm yeah, I bet it is too. Take it. I bet it's awesome.
Never know.
Where'd it come from? Player's Handbook Trinket Table, people. Super way better than just, I found some gold.
trinket table. Cool. I will implement that shortly into our Thursday campaign.
Anyway, you wanna skip down to the monsters before we talk about some domains?
I do.
Okay.
Because technically we have 14 minutes, so we'll jump down into.
That's fine. No. That's great. So the monsters, my absolute favorite part of this book. So there's a lot of notes in the upfront about how to theme various monsters towards your games, but it's got a lot of the classic horror monsters that we've been wanting for a while. Your body taker plants make pod people. For those of you who like your B-movie horror, you could totally start cranking out pod people. You could have a village that had been taken over by these plants, and the party runs across it, and it's like, oh, pod people everywhere. Then there's the boneless, which is effectively a husk of flesh that kind of flops around trying to eat people. Brain in a Jar came back. I know it's been printed in other books, but it got printed here as well because Brain in a Jar is a major horror trope. I like the art for it, though. They did good on Brain in a Jar this time around. One of my favorites from the set of the list here is the Carrion Stalker. It is effectively a larva trilobite monster. It has a very it makes me want to run like an Alien game where the party finds like a crashed Spelljammer or something like that. Be like a little face hugger that like slithers around on the floor with its little tentacly appendages, and drops down from the ceiling, and it looks, for those of you who don't know, it very much looks like a trilobite with like 6 eyes, or like a horseshoe crab maybe. Yeah, like that.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, you want a cool atmospheric horror game, crash a Spelljammer ship somewhere, or some other, find like a sunken wreck on like a reef or something, or just something weird, or like a mad science lab with a bunch of like broken tubes, and then just have one of these just kind of slither around in the shadows. It is a challenge rating 3 monster, so it could arguably fight a level 2 or 3 party. Maybe if it had like a few extra constructs or something, helping it out. I like the feature of, it's got its tentacles. That's always fun. But it has a larval burst. So it can just burst larva all over you. And you have to make your saving throw or be poisoned. If you don't, you start running into all kinds of strange issues where like the larva gets inside you and it starts growing, and then you get the little chest burster at some point.
Man, that doesn't sound vaguely familiar at all.
It's gonna be great.
I don't know if you've noticed, but I need you to stop being creative with your speaking, because Robert's notebook is out.
He'll have a great time. So moving on from that one, the Carrionet, my second favorite from this set. Creepy dolls. Everyone loves creepy dolls, and these ones, their coolest ability is that they can soul swap with people.
Which one is this?
The Carrionet.
Okay. Yeah.
It's a creepy doll. It has a silver needle as its weapon, but importantly, once you've been cursed by that silver needle, it has the ability to basically body swap you.
It's terrifying.
and then it will wander around in your body, and you will not be able to get your body back unless you damage, you as the Carrionet have to hit them. Well, you have to needle them back.
Oh,
the needle is the key.
Oh, that's cool.
So there's even a situation where they could swap bodies with you, and then as they could just take the needle. And then there's then not only as a doll, you then have to convince your party members that you are not, the body swap happened, but then you also have to somehow get the needle back so that you can stab them with the needle to get your body back.
Well, that's all the time we have. No. It's really cool. It apparently only understands the languages of its creator.
Yes.
Which is another cool little
right
thing you can sprinkle in there. Immune to being charmed, frightened, and poisoned. Resistant to poison and psychic damage. Cool.
But then you've got, your standard issue other monsters, like the Dullahan finally got a stab block. That's your Headless Horseman of Gaelic lore. I think it was more of an Irish-Scottish thing. I forget. But you've got a Gallows Speaker, which is kind of like a combination of ghosts so if you ever want a place of infinite suffering where many people have died, maybe like a sanitarium or an executioner's block or something.
Yeah.
All the dead have combined to form this ultimate grief spirit. That's the Gallows Speaker. But my second, one of my other favorites here, the Grimelshka. It's an evil cat. It's an evil cat monster. I love the art. It's a nice little 1/8 CR monster. And the best part of it is it follows Gremlins rules. And for those of you who didn't watch the classic 90s era Gremlins movies, you don't feed them after midnight. You especially don't get them wet. But yeah, they the Grimelka, it has a magic allergy. So if the wizard or other party member who casts spells around it, you get to roll on a table, and it can either cause everyone in the area to take some damage. It can surge with magical power and regain some hit points, but importantly, it could also just explode into a swarm of them. Mm-hmm. You don't get them wet. You don't cast magic around them. And the swarm is awesome because it has limited spell immunity. So it automatically succeeds on saving throws of spells 3rd level or lower, and attack rolls from such spells always miss.
Well, how about that?
It's good times. And then as a reaction, they can redirect spells. So spells that miss their attack roll can be redirected to another creature of their choice. So not only do spells of 3rd level or lower automatically miss them, but they can auto, as a reaction, bounce those spells off at other people.
Right.
So for those of you who liked using crag cats against your spellcasters, this is way cooler.
And it's a lot less CR rating. A lot less.
Oh yeah, by a lot.
But yeah, no.
Then there's some werewolf-like things in here. The Loup-Garou is a way better werewolf. It's scary, in fact.
The Loup-Garou.
Yeah. I'm super excited about the Necro-Ichor. It is basically a blood elemental that can puppet people. Once it damages you and gets blood on you and in you, it can just puppet you. That's fun, and I like the art for it too. I have a character. Well, the character that I'm going to be playing for the Eberron game coming up is going to be a Blood of Vol worshipper.
Nice.
And I'm in talks with the DM now to see if at some point we don't come across one of these Necro-Ickers in like an Eberron Blood of Vol lab somewhere in the Mournlands or something. Because I super want to interact with one of these things at some point.
That's really cool.
Then you got some Nosferatus and stuff like that. But one of the things that came out of Bloodspur is the great old one Cthulian thing is the vampire
Mind Flayer?
The vampire mind flayers.
Yeah.
So there's a reason these exist, and the reason behind it is super entertaining. But I just like the idea of vampire mind flayers in general because they look creepy.
Yeah, they do.
I
get strong Stranger Things vibes from this.
Right.
Yeah.
But no, the deal with them is a great old elder brain that is basically the lord of one of these realms of Ravenloft is going crazy. It's done so many reality warping horrible things that it's like starting to this immortal creature is starting to die because reality has just rejected it.
Yeah.
It has done so many horrible things. Reality is like, no, we have to shut this down. And it's beginning to die. Well, in order to in its insanity, because immortal things should never die,
right.
And it's struggling with its newfound kind of mortality. It has created these vampire mind flayers that go around sucking out all of your brain fluids and then coming back to its like pit. It's like, because elder brains kind of sit in like a big tub of juice.
Yeah.
And they wander into the juice pit and dissolve and disperse all of that harvested brain fluid so that the elder brain can be nourished by it. That's the story of why they exist.
Yeah. No, it's...
And I totally want to use them in other games because they look amazing.
Yeah. But no. So...
Yeah, Robert, any fun ideas out of this?
Yeah, I got about half a page filled up right now.
Yeah, of course you do. But no, I think let's come back to this at some point and really break down some more of this. I think we're gonna probably go ahead and stop for today, though. But lots of cool stuff in here. Stuff I'm impressed with. Specifically, the race options for me are what really does it for me. The vampiric mind flayer. Just throw that picture up again.
Yeah,
Creepy.
Good times.
Creepy. So again, we'll come back to this at some point. Probably break it down a little bit more later. But overall, solid book. So far from what I've seen, there's not been anything that I would drastically complain about. So if any of you guys are interested, everything that I've used today, and I'm sure you've used D&D Beyond.
Yeah, I've got it all listed here on D&D Beyond. Yeah.
You can also access all this on 5etools.com. It's right there.
Because I forgot to bring the actual book with me today. But luckily, D&D Beyond made it so much easier.
Yeah, for those of you that have D&D Beyond subscriptions and or have access to that, that's cool. Yeah, but you can also find these PDFs of this anywhere online, or just go pick up an actual physical copy. The alt art's really pretty.
Oh,
if
it
you
is.
If you can still
my
find
gosh.
one.
The alt art is so beautiful.
Really nice. So, I'm going to go ahead and stop here for today. In the future, we'll come back and revisit this like one of the other many things we have to come back and revisit yet. So, thank you guys so much for watching.
Yeah, thanks a
all I
lot.
got. So, we'll see you next time.
See ya.
Later.